Hey guys, today's question is what are the benefits of starting and running a distributed agency? An agency with remote workers, with freelancers and other folks who are not really obeying the traditional kind of office environment. Now, first, it's worth saying that Devrix is semi-distributed. We've definitely started as remote. Over 50% of our staff is still remote and distributed, but we also do have headquarters with some people on site because it's also important for collaboration, and some folks are simply adjusted to kind of office culture and team environment and working in a collaborative environment and so forth. So trying this hybrid distributed model is definitely something that works for us. We definitely see the merits of working with remote people because this really brings us additional cultural benefits and additional insights and some other perks that I'm going to mention. So in terms of benefits and kind of the reasons we've started, starting a remote team is a great way to scale freelancing. Now, lots of people I know, they do start agencies simply because they used to be consultants or freelancers prior to that. And it kind of makes sense. In order to have an agency, it's kind of expected that you're trying to scale past several people, so you're not working solo, meaning that it's a large expense that takes a while to gather and to build. And as a result, most people have started with freelance or consulting as a starting point. And once you do that, you're not really working in an office environment for the most part. You're used to being productive from the outside, from coffee shops, from co-working spaces and other places. So building an on-site team is not necessarily a priority or a goal for you. Another important thing is that this helps you work with other freelancers too. Now, if you're a freelancer or a consultant, this means that you're kind of building a team which is also comprised of former freelancers and consultants. Could be your co-founders, could be just other peeps in your kind of work environment, essentially other folks who are also used to working in a distributed fashion. And moreover, once you start scaling, you still don't have the resources and budget to just hire people randomly over a continuous period of time. So you try to allocate based on ROI. So you try to only pay for the work that's being done, which is essentially what freelancers are used to doing for the most part. And again, those are two major benefits. Now, third thing is the initial costs. If you actually want to build an on-site team, a company which is based out of a specific office space, then you need to rent and most of the time prepay for a couple months, 3 months, or sign a lease for a continuous period of time for your office. So what you end up doing is investing a lot of money for something that you don't necessarily need. Now, picking the right office for a small team is pretty weird because you may stick to about a couple people for the next 2 years, but you may eventually need to have other freelancers working with you or consultants, or try to have office space and some other collaborative rooms for meetings with clients. Eventually it gets a bit tricky. So you either have to occupy a pretty broad space that you're not using and it's massively expensive, or you sign a, say, 2-year contract for a small space and suddenly you outgrow this space in about 3 months from now. So again, it's a pretty poor investment, not to mention that you need to buy desks and laptops or computers and some other office machinery and pay for electricity and water and some other communal expenses. So it's not really a great deal for starters. And kind of for that expense, you can work with freelancers, you can work with consultants, you can hire remote full-time people without having to allocate and budget for upfront costs that are not necessarily returning your investment for the most part. And again, that's not to say that you need to undercharge. What I'm saying is you don't have to pay less for remote people or something like that. I'm saying that you may pay for someone who stays for 3 and 4 months and isn't a great fit, and you still need to buy a desk and laptop and everything else for them. Or you may have a 3-month contract, so you need a couple people to join and step in, not necessarily someone who's going to continue working with you in the long run, not necessarily a full-time fit. Probably you're going to work with them for 6, 9, 12 months, half time, until you're able to scale the work. So this is a good compromise, a good hybrid model to care of. Another thing is legal and accounting. It may be quite complicated to just work with freelancers and consultants and contributors and other folks who are not necessarily employed full-time. And also, if you're employing full-time, as a matter of fact, it may get a lot more expensive, a lot more complicated as compared to doing a B2B relationship. Most of the companies that I know of and that hire remote people, they actually hire them through kind of asking them to open their own companies and doing B2B business with the company, even if the company is actually comprised of one single person. So this is far from ideal, but just being able to hire people from all around the world is not necessarily easy with most legislations, which is why it may get pretty tough to actually make it work. And also, certain legal frameworks like the one in Europe is very much forward thinking when it comes to thinking about the employees, which is great, but is very risky for you as a business owner. And again, without being the head of capitalism here, you may have to keep someone for a very long time and pay several salaries upfront if they don't work for you, or if you can't really retain them simply because they don't have a business. So what I'm trying to say is one single hire may actually bankrupt your business due to the legal framework. So with that in mind, and adding accounting to the cost and adding all of those office expenses and everything else, sometimes building a remote agency, which is comprised of freelancers or even remote hires through other systems, is often a bit easier to scale for starters. And kind of the last thing, well, it's not really the last one, there are many more, but the last, which is kind of top of mind, is holidays and work hours. Now, most people trying to build on-site teams, they say it's really easy to get everyone in the same room and fit within the same working hours. And that's correct for the most part, but it gets a little bit trickier when you work across different time zones. You have clients from both the Europe and the States and Asia and probably Australia, basically working all around the clock. And then if you only fit within 8 or 9 business hours a day, you're not really competitive. It's hard to provide decent support and maintenance and consulting and everything else simply because everyone's more or less within the same time zone. Being able to hire remotely, it helps you hire people across different time zones, cover different regions, help out during night shifts, or let's say run deployments overnight instead of doing them during business hours when there are peaks, lots of people on the site. And you get the point. It's easier and sometimes it's better to run some initiatives overnight or over the weekends if possible, simply because those are not really peak hours for your clients. And that works extremely well if you have people across the world. It makes it easier so that you don't ask lots of people to run night shifts. So again, it's easier because it's more natural for them. Additionally, you may hire people from different cultures and different religions, meaning that let's say Christians celebrate Christmas and Easter, but Muslims celebrate Bayram and Ramadan, and then Jews celebrate Hanukkah and other holidays. So at some point it's a bit easier to schedule holidays and have some people at work during major holidays for the rest of the team in order to still make sure that support and everything else is intact, instead of asking people to work during major holidays. So that's for the most part. Again, you can scale it differently. You can open offices in different locations. Of course, it's a bit hard as you're just starting, but running a remote company definitely has its benefits. The main drawback is you can't really work with junior people because training them is impossible, and convincing someone who's senior to work for a starting business is of course risky. So this is kind of the main challenge with remote teams. But if you go past this, those benefits may be worth it and may be a great investment in the long run for you.